Jovan Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, Lakers beat writer for The Athletic, and welcome to episode 14 of Buha's Block. We are doing 3 episodes this week. Today's episode is a mailbag. I posted on Twitter/X that if you are subscribed to my YouTube channel or the podcast on podcasting platforms, that I will answer your question. I did get a lot of questions. There were around 30 of them. Some were duplicates, so I had to whittle them down, and some I couldn't answer for various reasons. But I picked a half dozen or so. So let's get into it. One quick note, I am recording this before the Lakers play the Pelicans on Tuesday evening. So some of these questions I am answering before we know whether AD is playing and what the result against the Pelicans is on Tuesday night. Question number 1 from @LakersLoop on Twitter. Where do you rank the Lakers out of all the teams in the playoffs? For me, it's going to be a bit of a range, just because I am factoring in that the Lakers are going to be the 7 or 8 seed if they get into the playoffs and not have home court advantage in likely any of their potential series. And that is a factor. They were open last season about how difficult it was to have to go into Memphis and win game 1 and do the same thing in Golden State and then try and do the same thing and come up short against Denver. So while the Lakers have shown they're capable of winning a game 1 on the road, it doesn't make it easy. And I think this year's West is deeper and tougher, as we will get into later in the Q&A. So with that said, I would have the Lakers in tier 2. So my tier 1 is Boston and Denver. I think those are the 2 best teams in the NBA and the heavy favorites to make the finals in their respective conferences. But right after them, I have the Lakers in that tier 2. And where my opinion gets a bit controversial is I have a big tier 2, and they're all West teams. I think there's a gap between most of the West and even the second best team in the East. If you put almost any Western Conference team in the finals against anyone in the East other than Boston, I think I would pick the West team. And that to me just speaks to how deep the West is and how deep it's been really for going on 20 plus years now. But I think my tier 2 is the Lakers, the Mavericks, the Suns, the Thunder, and I'm iffy on the Clippers and the Timberwolves. With the Clippers, it comes down to Kawhi Leonard's knee and just the uncertainty with that. And is he going to be available for game 1? How close to 100% is he going to be? Is he going to be close to 80%, 90%? Like where is he at physically? And then with Minnesota, I don't trust them. I think they're going to lose to Phoenix in round 1. I'm currently picking Phoenix in 6. I'm also picking Dallas in 6 over the Clippers. So I guess if I had to whittle it down, I would go Lakers, Mavericks, Suns, and Thunder in that tier 2 behind the top 2 of Denver and Boston. Despite the Thunder being a tier 2 team, I would favor the Lakers above them in a 1-8 matchup. But Dallas has been right there for best record in the West alongside the Lakers over the last couple months. Phoenix closed out really strong. They went 7-3 over their final 10 games, despite having by far one of the toughest schedules. So I would probably have those 4 teams in my tier 2. Then tier 3, I would go to Clippers, Timberwolves, Knicks, Bucks. For the Lakers, you could make the argument that they're as high as number 3 overall behind Boston and Denver. The Lakers had the 4th best record in the West after February 1st, behind only Denver, Dallas, and Oklahoma City. So the Lakers are right there, but I would probably tier it out more and put them in that second tier again with Dallas, Phoenix, and Oklahoma City, though I could see the Lakers beating any of those teams in a potential series. Next question from @KingsHUBBR, Kings Hub. What's your feeling on this year's Lakers team compared to last year? I feel like they're better, but so is the competition. That's my exact feeling. You said it succinctly. I think this Lakers team is better than last year's team, and that's even with missing Jarred Vanderbilt. I think with Jarred Vanderbilt back, they are much better than last year's team. And last year's team made the conference finals. Now, as far as the Denver matchup, I still think it's a tricky matchup for them. Again, I think they would get a game or 2 off of Denver, but I still would heavily favor Denver in a potential series. But the Lakers' offense has been at basically top 3 to top 5 levels for going on 3 months now. There have been stretches where they've been the best offense. That starting lineup basically doesn't have a weakness. You have 2 top 10 guys in LeBron and AD. You have one of the best catch and shoot threats in the league in D'Angelo Russell, also an elite playmaker. You have one of the best ISO scorers in the league statistically, and one of the best guards at getting to the free throw line in Austin Reeves, also a good passer and playmaker. And then you have Rui Hachimura, who is maybe the best fifth option in the league. In that conversation, at least in terms of a starting lineup. Like not overall, of course, you look at Denver and Boston, like their 5-man units are better, but in terms of a fifth scorer in a starting lineup, Rui is in that conversation. As you saw against the Pelicans, he's back cutting and getting dunks and offensive rebounds, and like Lakers have really figured out creative ways to use him. And you add in Spencer Dinwiddie and Gabe Vincent and Taurean Prince and Jackson Hayes, and that's a really solid 9-man rotation. And that's to say nothing of a potential Jarred Vanderbilt return at some point. I like this Lakers roster better than last season's. D'Lo and Rui are playing at better levels. LeBron's better. AD's better. Austin's gotten back to the level he was at last year. You could probably argue he's better too. So really, like, all those guys have gotten better. The Lakers haven't replaced Dennis Schroeder. Like, Spencer Dinwiddie has been a plus. Gabe has had some good defensive moments. Like that's a overall downgrade from what Dennis gave them last year. But Jackson Hayes has been better than any of the backup bigs, Wenyen Gabriel, Tristan Thompson. And I'd even say Taurean Prince in his reduced role has given LA more than the likes of a Troy Brown or a Malik Beasley entering the playoff. So again, I think LA's in a good spot. I think in a neutral setting, they'd arguably have the third best odds at winning a championship. The problem is the West is just incredible. And LA won 47 games more than last year, and they ended up being the 8 seed. And of course, they could still be the 7 depending on what happens against the Pelicans. But like in terms of like regular season, just where things ended, like last year, they were the 7 with 43 wins. This year, they're the 8 with 47. So it just speaks to the depth of the West. Like even the 10 seed this year, the Warriors, they won 46 games. So you had 10 teams in the West winning 46 or more games. 50 wins got you the number 5 seed this year. That was the Dallas Mavericks. So the West is better, and the West is going to continue to be great. Like Houston's going to get better. Memphis is going to get better. San Antonio is going to get better. Utah has given up the last couple of years late in the year, but they could have been a team that won close to 40 games if they continued playing. So the West is treacherous. The West is the better conference by far. I don't think it's close. Again, my tier 2 is all West teams, but you said it perfectly. I think the Lakers are better than last year, but so is the West, and that's what makes a potential playoff run a bit tricky. Next question from @KJLakers24. Should we win and face Denver, what, in your opinion, is the best way to defend Jokic and Murray? Do you think putting LeBron and Rui on Jokic and having AD help is more effective? Do you think Gabe and Spencer, who are both taller and bigger than Dennis, can guard Murray better? This is a question that I've touched on multiple times on my post-game reaction shows, on this podcast. And I want to do it again with a potential Denver matchup looming depending on what happens Tuesday night. So I'm going to preface this with saying you need to mix up looks against the Nuggets. I don't think there is one way to defend them. I think you have to try Rui on Jokic. You have to try AD on Jokic. You have to try LeBron on Jokic. Throw different looks at Jamal. I do think from a size perspective, Spencer and Gabe have a better chance at disrupting him a little bit more than Dennis. Like Dennis is obviously going to pressure 94 feet. He's quicker. He's going to get into you. He's going to be a pest. But ultimately, Murray is so big that there's only so much Dennis can do. So I do think Spencer and Gabe are better equipped to defend him from a size perspective. You might have to dust off Cam Reddish or Max Christie in limited doses. To be clear, and as always, I would prefer Max, but I realistically understand that the Lakers would likely go with Cam over Max in that scenario. But I think you got to mix up pitches. That's a term that Darvin Ham and LeBron both like to use. Like you got to mix up pitches and coverages defensively. You got to do different things to keep them uncomfortable, keep them guessing, and not let them figure out your defensive scheme and what you're going to be doing. But with that said, I look at your question as more of a crunch time question, right? Because the Lakers, for the first 40 to 42 minutes of all of these games against the Nuggets, they play them pretty well, right? Like they are, in some instances, they've been up. In some instances, the teams are tied, or it's just a very close game. And then the final 4 to 8 minutes, always goes Denver's way. And what I would like to see from the Lakers is, and this is just something to try. I'm not saying it's going to work. I don't know if it'll work. I don't know if there is an answer to the Jokic Murray pick and roll and two-man game and DHOs and all that stuff. But I think the Lakers should put LeBron James on Jamal Murray like they did in the 2020 Western Conference Finals for a stretch, and put AD on Nikola Jokic, and then just switch their actions and just try and stay in front of them. And to me, LeBron and AD are the only two Laker defenders that can conceivably guard both Jokic and Murray. Like Rui can guard Jokic, he can't guard Murray. If Vando was back, I think he could guard Murray. I don't think he could guard like Spencer. I think he could guard Murray, but I don't think he could guard Jokic. So LeBron and AD, you switch any two-man action, any pick and roll between them, and force Murray to take a moonball shot over Anthony Davis's outstretched arms, or force Jokic to try and back down LeBron, which has actually been like Bron has arguably been the best Jokic defender out of the three Laker primary defenders against him. Like everyone talks about Rui and having AD as the help side guy. Like I think LeBron has done a great job against him. So I don't think you can put LeBron on Jamal for 40 minutes, but when it comes to crunch time, put him on Jamal and have him lock into him and just switch any two-man action between those two guys. And I'm sure the Nuggets will have a counter and they'll figure out a way to exploit it. But I think ideally you switch that action. It's something that Anthony Davis talked about, not after this last loss to the Nuggets, but after the loss on the Kobe statue day, where he said you just have to switch everything and try and keep them in front of you. And that clicked in my head with the idea of just put LeBron and AD. Those are the only two guys on the roster that can defend both of them credibly. And then you have Rui as the help guy battling Aaron Gordon on the glass. Aaron Gordon is a bit taller and certainly stronger and more athletic than Rui, but Rui's really the only guy that has a similar profile to him. Of course, LeBron, but LeBron is now in the two-man action with Jokic and Murray. Then ideally you would have Jarred Vanderbilt back, and we'll see what happens with him in terms of his availability in the first round. But then I go Spencer Dinwiddie on MPJ. I remember back in the day, Phil Jackson basically told Rick Fox, like, you are going to live in Peja Stojakovic's jersey. You are not going to let him shoot. That was, I believe, it was either 2001 Western Conference semifinals or the 2002 Western Conference finals. I don't remember which series it was. But that's what I tell Spencer Dinwiddie and whoever's guarding MPJ. Like, you are not helping off of MPJ. You are locked onto MPJ and you're not letting him get the ball, because once he gets the ball, he's going to get a shot off, and no one on the Lakers can really contest him with that 6'10", 6'11", long arms, high release point. Like he's a really tough player, and he always kills the Lakers. The answer is not putting Austin Reeves on him. I think it's got to be doses of Spencer Dinwiddie. In the starting group, I guess it's Rui. Though Rui's defensive awareness sometimes isn't the best, I don't love that. It is better than putting Austin Reeves on him. I think you're going to start with Austin Reeves on Jamal, AD on Jokic, LeBron on Gordon, Rui on MPJ, and D'Lo on KCP. I don't love the D'Lo KCP matchup, but you got to live with something, and KCP is the fifth option, fourth or fifth, depending on the night. But again, I would put LeBron on Jamal. I would put AD on Jokic. I'd put Rui on Aaron Gordon, smack him in the chest a couple times, and say, yo, like, you need to battle this dude on the glass. No lobs, no offensive rebounds, no back cuts. Spencer on MPJ, and then Austin on KCP chasing him around. And notice I did not say D'Angelo Russell. I think this is a tough matchup for D'Lo. Like, take aside the offensive end, and maybe D'Lo, if he can make enough shots and be enough of a net impact offensively, you keep him out there. I just think that messes with the matchup so much, because you don't want to put Austin on MPJ and you don't want to put D'Lo on MPJ. So even if you're fine with D'Lo guarding KCP, where are you putting Austin now? Are you putting Austin on Jamal? Well, now that's changing the Jamal Jokic two-man game, and now you can't switch that, because if you switch Austin on Jokic, Jokic is just going to back him down and score over him, as he did against Austin, as he did against Cam, as he's done against Torrey. Like, any of those guys, anyone that's not Rui, LeBron, or AD, Jokic is just going to easily back them down and score over them. And even those guys, he's backed them down and scored over them or hit tough jumpers over them. So I don't know the answer to slowing down the Jokic-Murray two-man game, but I do know what the Lakers have done has not worked. And I don't think putting a Cam or an Austin on Jamal and just hoping that they can get around a Jokic screen or switching that with those guys and having them guard Jokic. Like I think that's not going to work. It has not worked for the Lakers. So I think you have to go with two like-sized bodies in AD and LeBron. Switch it, try and keep them in front. If they're going to hit tough shots over them, they're going to hit tough shots over them. There's just nothing you can do about it. Then have Rui battle Aaron Gordon inside. Have Spencer stick with MPJ, not Taurean Prince. MPJ has cooked Taurean Prince in the regular season. Taurean's another guy with his defensive awareness in terms of like navigating screens and just tracking players. He's below average in that regard. So I would not put Taurean on MPJ, but I think you got to go Spencer and you put Austin on KCP. He's really good at chasing and getting around screens. So that's my 5-man unit defensively against the Nuggets. You're having an offensive downgrade going from D'Lo to Spencer, but with D'Lo in there, I just don't know who he guards. And if you want to put him on KCP, now you're putting Austin on MPJ, or okay, now you're putting Rui on MPJ. Well, now you're having Austin on Aaron Gordon, and Aaron Gordon's gonna live at the rim and in the paint with lobs and offensive rebounds and back cut. And ideally, you get Jarred Vanderbilt back, and he could be the one guarding MPJ. No Spencer in that case. And now you're going with a big lineup of Austin, LeBron, Rui, Vando, and AD, and you could switch across for those positions, and Austin is just chasing KCP around. That's what I'd like to see. I'm not saying it would work, but it's something different. Next question from @LakersSeason824, John, Lakers in 6. Do you think Max Christie will leave in free agency if he gets the right money? Also, what role do you think Max will play if he returns next season? 6th to 10th man, maybe a starter? Okay, so the thing with restricted free agency, which is what Max is going to be entering, is teams typically stay away from restricted free agents just because of having their money tied up for several days potentially with a contract and them being a bit handicapped in terms of the other moves that they can make in free agency. And more often than not, the team with the restricted free agent will just match the contract. That's what I expect with the Lakers. Any reasonable offer for Max, they will match that. If I was a rival front office, I would be targeting Max Christie, though. I think he's a very underrated player. I think he's an underrated prospect. He's still only 21. He's younger than some players that are going to be taken in the first round in this upcoming draft. And I think he has the upside of a high-level 3-and-D role player, be it as a starter or as one of the top players off the bench on a really good team. So he's the type of guy I would try and steal if I could. Now, what that price will be, I don't know. To be clear, this is pure speculation, so I don't want to get aggregated for this. But I could see him getting something like 3 years, $18 million to 3 years, somewhere in the 18 to 24 million range, which would be about $6 to $8 million a year. I think he deserves that. That could be on the high side, like 7-8 million could be on the high side for him. But even somewhat like 315 to 324, somewhere in that range, I think is reasonable and realistic for Max Christie. The Lakers would want to match that. Like I have heard, they want to keep Max. They are high on Max. They have refused to include him in previous deals, going back to the Kyrie potential trade at the 2023 trade deadline. And then in 2024, they did not want to include him in any of the talks they were having. So Lakers are high on Max, despite him not playing as much as he probably should this season. Like I've said 100 times on here, I think he's better than Cam Reddish. I think from a development perspective, he has more upside than Cam Reddish. He should be ahead of him in the pecking order. I think he should be a rotation guy. I don't really get why he's not, but that's, it just is what it is. But looking at next season, I think it depends on, is Darvin Ham still the coach, right? And what happens with Taurean Prince is going to be a free agent. Cam Reddish could be a free agent. So the Lakers might have some openings on the wing. And in that case, I could see Max sliding up to being like the 8th or 9th guy next year, maybe even higher. I don't want to be too rosy or optimistic in that regard. If the Lakers are re-signing him to like a 3-year, $21 million deal, that guy's probably going to play. So again, somewhere like some 3-year deal, probably in the teens, maybe in the low 20s, seems reasonable and realistic to me. And I think if the Lakers keep him, which they should, then he will be a rotation guy next year, probably more in the back end of the rotation. Could play a similar role to Taurean, like this version of Taurean, not the earlier version of Taurean. But in that case, I think he has the chance to be, again, maybe like the 8th man and play an important role next year. Next question is from @Zane_GOGH. Are there any updates on Christian Wood? No, there have been no updates on Christian Wood. He has been around the team more at home games. He's not with the team currently in New Orleans. So I wouldn't rule out a return at some point this postseason. It does seem like it would probably be later than earlier. But honestly, even if Christian Wood comes back, I don't know if there's a spot for him in the rotation. Like Jackson Hayes has been playing at such a high level for the past couple months in general. He's had some stinkers, he's had some off games, but for the most part, Jackson has been pretty reliable. And for the 8 to 12 minutes that the Lakers are going to need their backup center, I would lean Jackson over Christian, especially with Jackson like reducing his fouling. I thought he had a really good rim protection game against the Pelicans. And yes, the theory of Christian's shooting, which is not translated this year, I think he's shooting around 32% on threes. The rebounding is a big thing. They really need rebounding in a series, sure. But defensively, I think Jackson has been better. Offensively, his rim running, the rolling, the offensive rebounding, just the general energy and activity, I would have Jackson ahead of Christian. So even if Christian comes back, I don't know if he's necessarily going to play. Next question from @LAL Prime. Is a Jarred Vanderbilt return possible if the Lakers make it to the playoffs? And when could he return if so? All right, so this is a tough one because I've been getting Jarred Vanderbilt questions for months now. And initially I was hearing he was out for the regular season. Then I had some people with the team push back against that and say he was going to return before the end of the regular season. Then I heard he was going to return the last couple weeks of the regular season. Then now I've started to hear maybe the first round, and like, I don't know. I really don't. I hear conflicting things that he's done for the year. He's returning in the first round, or he's returning later if the Lakers can get out of the first round. Like there's so much noise around the situation that at this point, I'm operating as if the Lakers are not going to have Jarred Vanderbilt. Like maybe they will. Like I'm not ruling out a return. It's just like there's been so much chatter with it. It's so many different things that I hear that I don't know. Like I really don't. And I know the Lakers would love to have him back. And there was a point a few weeks ago where players were talking about having him back. And it was almost as if it was a certainty. Like Rui was talking about it. Like when we get Vando back, AD was talking about when we get Vando back. AD even had a comment about, I'm not going to tell you guys the timeline because I don't want you guys making assumptions or running with it or whatever. So like there's been an acknowledgement that Vando was likely coming back or expected to come back. But the latest I've heard is he's ramped up his conditioning, but he has not been doing 5-on-5 contact yet. Ramping up his conditioning and then returning to 5-on-5 scrimmaging and contact would be the next steps in the process. So it seems like he's getting there in terms of getting close to potentially returning, but your guess is as good as mine. Maybe the first round, maybe mid to late first round. Although trying to implement Jarred Vanderbilt in like game 3 or 4 against Denver is not ideal. Maybe the Lakers, if they win that series or they get OKC and they win that series, like maybe he comes back in the second round. Like this has been a tough one, right? Like there's been no real updates. And he was supposed to be reevaluated. Then we were told there's no updates and he had a good workout. And like it's been a very weird situation. So I really don't know. And again, like I've heard maybe the first round, but we'll see. And finally, the last question from @LakersFan617. What was your favorite game/moment of the season? There are 3 moments that come to mind when I think of this season. And it's been a rough season for me, I'm not gonna lie, with tearing my Achilles right before the year and missing most of November, and then December and January being in a boot and being relatively limited from a mobility perspective. But the 3 games that come to mind are the in-season tournament championship in Las Vegas and really the whole in-season tournament Las Vegas experience, the Lakers-Pelicans game and then the Lakers-Pacers game. But if I had to pick one, being at the inaugural championship game for the in-season tournament, the Lakers winning that. And that was like the closest I've been to being in a championship situation. I did cover the 2021 NBA Finals between the Suns and the Bucks, but I was covering the Suns at the time. So I actually covered the losing side. It did not get to experience the champagne and all that stuff. But getting to go in the Lakers locker room after, players had goggles on, the trophy was in the middle of the locker room, and just the celebratory nature of that night was a really cool experience. Number 2 would be the Boston win on the road on February 1st. No LeBron, no AD. They get ruled out a few hours before the game. I'm expecting like a 20 to 30 point blowout with the Lakers B squad going up against the Celtics, who have the best record in the league and are just playing at an incredible level. And the Lakers pull off arguably their best win of the season without LeBron and AD. And that was like as happy as I've seen the team this season outside of the in-season tournament championship. That was just a really cool sports experience of like, that's why we play the games. They're not played on paper. Anybody could beat anybody on a given night. Austin had a huge game. Jackson Hayes, Jarred Vanderbilt before he gets injured. D'Lo almost had a triple-double. That was just a fun game to watch. And then the third one is the double overtime win over the Warriors. That was arguably the game of the year. It was probably the best game the Lakers have played this year, just in terms of like a viewing experience. The big shots from Steph Curry and D'Lo pulling up a transition and LeBron getting to the free throw line and making the game-winning free throws. And like there were so many elements to that game of all the history with LeBron and the Warriors, the recent history with the Lakers and the Warriors, LeBron versus Steph, and then just double overtime. Like who doesn't love double overtime? Unless you're writing on deadline, which fortunately I didn't have to. So that was just a really, really fun game. Like again, probably the best game the Lakers have played in this season, and just the back and forth and how competitive it was and all the big shots and the drama and the roller coaster nature of that game. So those are the three, I would say: the in-season tournament championship over the Pacers, beating Boston on the road without LeBron and AD, and then the double overtime win in Golden State. But that will do it for today's mailbag. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening. As a reminder, I recorded this before the Lakers game against the Pelicans on Tuesday, so some stuff might be outdated by the time you're listening to this. I'll try to keep it as evergreen as possible and make it bigger picture questions that can apply to after the game. For those on YouTube, please consider subscribing, hitting that notification bell, liking, and commenting. For those on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and your podcast platform of choice, please consider following, downloading, and leaving a 5-star review. Thank you again, and I will talk to you soon.